Namaskar, I'm Ashok Vyas. Sometimes we hear people say life is a race. So, who are we racing against? Are we racing against time? Are we running away from something? Or sometimes running itself becomes a way to embrace life in its totality. That aspect would be revealed to us by the presence of someone who has not only reinvented himself several times, but has continued his passion for running. Why Sunil Robert, who's author, motivational speaker, and of course, in the corporate world, a known name, is passionate about race. We will learn from him directly. And let me first of all welcome my friend Sunil Robert Vuppula ji. Um,
Good day, Ashok Vyas ji. It's always a pleasure to join your show. You're always spreading happiness and good vibes, and your messages are always inspiring about peace, the welfare of the world. It's my joy to be here with you this morning.
and it is my joy to share this image with our viewers where you have taken a selfie, and here is another selfie where someone else has taken. And talk to me what this place is and what are you doing there?
This was barely 48 hours ago. We were in Toronto. I was running a marathon with about 25,000 other runners from 78 countries who have
Wow.
taken part. And obviously, the elite runners from Kenya, Ethiopia, they won the race and walked away with the honors. But like I said, people from 78 nationalities were represented there. And I'm, of course, from Indian origin, and I was there running. And it was a glorious day of running. And any time where, even if 4 or 5 countries are represented, we start thinking, okay, this is one big world family. We are the world, we are the universe kind of a thing. And it running as a sport, and like all sports, whether it's the Indian Cricket World Cup that is going on right now, or the Soccer World Cup that happens every 4 years, or even in the Super Bowl, many of our people of immigrants, we all are now living in this part of the Western Hemisphere. Sport has a way of bringing people together in a world that is otherwise divided.
Actually, when you are saying otherwise divided, currently, while I'm speaking to you, many of us are concerned what is going to happen. And of course, Ukraine and Russia war continues, but then the terror attack on Israel, and then the necessity to bounce back and to contain the potential threat that they were facing from Gaza. And overall, the way world has also taken a note of it, and there is a need to take sides, etc. So things are in a state of turmoil, if I say that. And we come back to how our personal preferences and priorities in life, whether they make direct impact on the universal harmony or not, but collectively they do make, and as they say, each drop counts. So talk to me about what you uh, gain out of running running, which keeps you connected to this track.
It's a great question, Ashok ji, and someone like you who's always studying spirituality, intersection of the world affairs, global affairs. You are well positioned to ask that question, because as a teenager, when I went back in my own journey, I was involved in campus politics, student politics. I was a lost young person, and most young people are ready targets for either political parties to suck them into just being their volunteers and youth activists and party representatives, or if religious extremist groups are targeting, they are targeting these young people. So as a young person, I was lost. And during that early 90s, if you remember that Mandal agitation and all the violence that went with it, bus public property ka tod fod karna, all that we were involved, and campus has had become a hotbed of political activism. Now, for the most part, when you start graduating out of college, domestic responsibilities in India are thrust upon young people. Young people start thinking of jobs, careers, and some of them go into public service. They want to pursue public service. Some of that is channelized in the right way, and thanks be to God, mera story thoda I turned around a bit. But otherwise, I am no better than any of these jihadi young people, or people who are getting into extreme violence there, where they are being either brainwashed. So what makes a young person a prime target is actually linked to the topic that you've raised: power of purpose. When I did not have a purpose, I was vulnerable for anything. And जो भी बुलाया, अरे बिरयानी खिलाएंगे, इसको जाके मार के आते हैं, we all would go, just for the allure of beating up somebody or being in a gang. That sense of community that these people tend to offer, saying, if you join this group, we give you a purpose. And that's where identifying what is a true purpose for you versus what is a group shared purpose as defined by somebody becomes important in your pursuit of life's purpose.
So, talking about, you have been very generous in being open, in looking at the similarity that any human being have in terms of where he or she is drawn, and there the question of purpose comes. Brainwashing term also we hear, but we don't know how it operates, how it works. And partly you alluded when you say there is a sense of camaraderie or you belong to a particular group. Let let us just hypothetically, and it may come across as a child's question, but these 30,000 people from Hamas who are ready to sacrifice their lives and take others' lives and hurt to the maximum extent to another human being. So, here the sense of identity as a human being gets sidelined. There is another identity that starts ruling the way they act. Can you think on this space what might offer a bigger purpose in their mind
Sure.
to act in such inhuman, barbaric manner?
Sure. So, one of the famous tools that people use to interpret human aspirations is a thing called the Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. पता
Yeah.
है आपको? Now, everyone, particularly in these countries which are
No, no, no.
impoverished,
Spell,
emerging
uh,
countries.
sorry, spell out those hierarchy. I remember
Yes.
vaguely, but yeah, some of us.
Yes, I will start. So he basically said that human beings, the basic needs are like food, shelter, clothing. They are at the basic survival needs. After that come slightly better another needs which are more satisfying in terms of education, in terms of being gainfully employed, and so on and so forth. But as you keep going up to the top, then comes a sense of society, community, all that. But at the peak is what is called self-actualization, which is, in our Indian terms, we call it nirvana. In Judeo-Christian worldview, they call it salvation. Basically, when you come to the top of the pyramid, you are achieving your life's purpose, ultimate purpose. Now, what these people are doing, and that is true even in India. Let's say when we looked at the communist young people's movement in AP or Telangana, where I am from, there used to be a very active radical students union, which used to be a part of the, which is a part of the communist party, and they believed in violent ways of overthrowing the thing. And so even right in those days, we were exposed to what young people could be potentially doing if they chose that ideology and lived by it. So what these people are offering is, we'll take care of your basic survival needs. You become a part of us. Instead of going through each of these, we'll take you to the top. So the promise of becoming a warrior, the promise of becoming a martyr is like, you live forever, and you will receive these heavenly blessings, and you will get all this, is an allure that very few people can turn down, saying, look, if you do this, you don't have to grind your way, naukri karo, 50 saal jiyo. at the age of 25 or 23, whenever you are, you're willing to commit your life for the cause. Boom, you are going to the top of the ladder. Self actualization, heaven awaits you, rewards await you. That's a very powerful brainwashing tool for anyone who is willing to throw these young people in harm's way. Now you can say, what about sport as a change agent? What about community building as a change agent? So for every element that you see which are a violent group, there are tons, and that's where the untold stories come into.
Let me interrupt you to seek your input on another side, which is relevant all the time. And what you said also reminded me. That means education plays an important role. That means awareness and exposure to what glory lies in you makes a big difference in the way
Absolutely.
you would design your life. Now, from that point of
Absolutely.
view, if you have also followed news these days, it happens in general also. Many of us get caught up in our prejudice or certain rigid notions about
About.
A, B, C things happening in certain fashion.
Yeah.
Now, right now, as I speak to you, I came across several interviews where what you have seen in the news in terms of the attack on Israel and the way uh, there were rapes and small children and elderly people got killed, etc. Not getting into all the details, but what you hear from students on the campus, not just in America, but in certain European countries also, where they say, no, this all is propaganda. They say this is all lie. So, what my question to you is, sometimes we work in a blindfolded manner and don't let ourselves be exposed to another side of fact or truth,
True.
which would compel us to shift our position. Now,
Positions.
this rigidity, I think, it causes the kind of conflicts which are way more destructive than even the nuclear bombs. Uh,
Absolutely.
so,
In
what?
fact, what I want to share is, I'm blessed to be a part of an age group and an era where knowing other faiths, being able to share a meal with people from the other faiths. When you are at a dining table sharing a meal with somebody, that is as close to an intimate thing that you can do. Breaking bread with somebody is as close to an intimate thing that you can do with anybody, where they are sharing a piece of their life. Now, despite all that, we may not agree on anything other than the fact that we were able to, share a meal. But the point is, I grew up in a multicultural society like Hyderabad, where we had people from all faiths intermingling with each other and knowing their stories. Now, education is such a big part. If there are certain parts of India, and you know this even in North India as very well, where there are pockets of poverty which only education can liberate. Now, what happens is, just pure education alone won't sort of lift the individual unless it's complemented by employment and a better life ultimately. But education at least allows them to come and be a part of the table of opportunities. That is a key part of education. Now, if you look at all these countries, lack of education is one part, lack of employment opportunity is another part. But what is worse is, even access to things like basic sporting facilities where they can play a sport. Like, if you look at all these Middle Eastern countries, they're crazy about soccer. Recently we had the World Cup in Qatar, and we saw how some of these countries were rooting for their home teams. Now, where is this patriotic fervor coming from when it comes to a sporting event? And if you are a sports buff and you encourage fair play, how can some of these people be actively supporting or being actively participating in this kind of harmful and destructive activities?
So
So
what?
sport by definition, education by definition, sets you up to treat everybody as fair and equal. That's the foundation of
Yeah.
education.
So Sunil, I disagree with you 0%, which means I totally agree with you. But my question is, when one is not open enough to expose himself or herself towards the other side, which is not in sync with what you already have put in your
in your
mind.
in your mind.
So that position shift is very difficult. How that
It
can
is.
come about?
It is. The only way is actually having dialogues, and which is where the American campuses, which are now become so divided, becomes a key part. I've seen personally some debates where each one is attacking the other, each one is yelling at each other at each other's protest rallies. Now, that's the beauty of democracy. Now, in a democracy, you could yell at each other, you can disagree with each other, but yet you are still expressing your viewpoint. But the irony is, many of these people who are expressing these kind of views do not have the same liberties in their home countries. That's the ironic part. So you come into a more democratic country, and of course every country has its own foibles and limitations. And I'm not saying America is the greatest or India is the greatest. We have that fair play space. Now, if you look at those debates, what is happening is it's happening in elite campuses, namely Harvard, Yale, Stanford.
Colombia.
Now, if those places cannot afford a third option where we can sit together and have conversations without yelling and pointing fingers at each other, then where is the search for common ground? Can we at least agree that we are all fundamentally human beings who deserve the right to live? Now, many of these people, in their quest for achieving their militant goals, are even removing their basic desire or the right to live. Now, you can put yourself in harm's way, but what gives you the right to put others in harm's way in quest of your purpose? And that's where the ability to use sports comes into play. Every time there is a global conflict, I'm always reminded of how the human beings can show their best at Olympics, for example, where every country is cheered. When you could cheer people at these games, despite their religious or other propensities, why can't we do it during non-sporting events? And that's the concern for me.
Yeah.
Now, if political aims and religious aims are ultimately being manipulated into affecting common human beings on the street, then the price of human life is just no meaning.
So we probably need more inner work on tuning ourselves to appreciate the glory of life and the beauty and celebrate that. And again, we should remind ourselves that we have limited number of breath given to each one of us, and
Yeah.
they are precious. So let me segue slightly to that moment where you were few hours or days ago, and you reached to this place.
Yes. So the joy of running is such a lovely sport that all you need is a pair of running shoes. You know, when you see videos of poor communities playing soccer or a ball with a deflated ball, just with two wooden sticks kept as goal posts, you realize that it doesn't take an awful lot to play a sport. And running is one sport like this. Of course, you can become all fancy and buy these extremely expensive pairs of shoes or whatever, but running is what human beings were designed for. Slow walking, jogging, running, whatever you call it, we are fundamentally hunters, animal hunters, or we evolved from as a species. We went down gathering food, walked miles and gathered food and so on. So it's a basic sport that allows you to do anything. Now, the problem with our modern day society is Sare din we are sitting in front of the laptops, computer screens, and all you want to do is just go home and watch again in front of a big screen and relax. And that kind of a lifestyle actually defeats the purpose for which your body has been created for. So running elevates a fundamental human purpose. And when I finished this race, I actually achieved my best time ever in 12 years. Now, as runners, we tend to age faster because we are putting more into our breaths that you have spoken of. And so people tend to age faster. But my goal has been the dream to run a sub 5 hour marathon. Now, as you know, I'm in my 50s, and to me, to run a sub 5 hour was a dream come true. And so it requires a tremendous amount of discipline, grit, the ability to motivate yourself on days when you don't feel like running. आपको तो पता है, in New Jersey area में you had heights of summer, and now we're cooling off. So managing seasons, and you can't run on a treadmill all your training runs. You go out and hit the streets and pound the pavements and so on. So the ability to live by your purpose, my purpose has always been to make the best use of my life in inspiring people around me. And hopefully this race, as you saw on Facebook and LinkedIn, is inspiring other people.
So I'm also inspired, Sunilji, and that's why I thought it's important to take your time and talk to you about this particular moment. So
Yes.
if I was there, I could have, oh wow, we have a double role of this matter. So if I was there, I could have also perhaps taken a picture in front of such screen, but I couldn't have the kind of joy and sense of accomplishment that you have on your face there. So talk to me, how was that moment for you, and why it is significant to endure every day? I don't know how many miles you were running to be there for that moment.
So the way it works
Yeah. So I think technology
is, they say
sometimes.
the human body can only miles or 32 kilometers, but that extra 6 miles you run purely by virtue of your mental resolve and spirit's power or purpose. And so every marathon finisher experiences that moment when they cross the finish line, that something superhuman that normal humans couldn't achieve. In fact, when the original marathon story, the Greek run warrior who brought stone to the battlefield actually ran these 40 odd kilometers and collapsed and died. So it marathons have their starting in very tragic beginnings. But in celebration of that great man who brought the news and collapsed at the finish line, we all run, and it's a great feeling. And for me, this is my 14th full marathon, and I've done countless half marathons. But each race is special, but this one is more special because I did it under 5 hours. The earlier races were all above 5 hours.
So now, Sunili, moving, we are kind of juxtaposing between an individual's experience, aspirations, and tuning his energy towards a pursuit of something, and the way collectively we see us as world community are finding our resources moving in certain directions. The way things are at the moment, not getting into all the details, but there is a sense of fear as what may come tomorrow. And here, if I ask you about the role that leaders are supposed to play, or what we expect them to play, and again, let's not expect too much magic from them, but looks like we need leaders who have maybe more wisdom to to navigate the uh, the the way events unfold towards a more harmonious space than what we have right now. And allow me also to mention, Sunilji,
Sure.
when Israel decided to settle, call it score, or it was needed, the nation was also in not just suffering and pain and grief, and they were humiliated also. And so while America and India and certain nations stood with Israel, that, I mean, that was justified, and you need to also appreciate the way Israel managed to neutralize those who had infiltrated, and they had planted themselves at certain 8 or 9 places. And so I compliment the spirit of Israelis who are not in Israel right now, but they also went back to support and fight for the nation, etc. So up to that part, and again, respecting Israel for its strength, but the way they want to have a sustainable peace, and then the ground attack on the Gaza Strip, which initially America was favoring, and then they said it will be a bad move, etc. Which means uh, what we decide today is also dynamic, and we cannot foresee how things will be tomorrow. But if you were the key advisor to American president and the head of state of Israel, what you can think of to share as a piece of advice?
So, one of the first things that I've always been fascinated about war is there are no clear winners in war. And even if there's a winner, it is what is called a Pyrrhic victory, where it costs more to win a victory, where the victor pays a bigger price than the one who was vanquished. So, warfare and warcraft is better left to these experts. But as somebody who's just observing from a distance, if we were to advise, what and this is where the ability for Israel, who built their reputation as cyber security experts, cyber, yeah, their cyber intelligence is of top notch. Their SWAT teams are like top notch. Their ability to take out intelligence hotbeds was awesome, and which is why the whole world was aghast, and they started blaming it as an intelligence failure on the part of Israel, that they could not foresee or anticipate this thing. So it's like every security apparatus has its limitations, and it was exposed in this instance. Now, what my as to directly answer your question would be to use cyber warfare and communications networks to actually try and destroy their ability to communicate first. Now, any successful strategy comes down to actually communicating and capability to communicate. And so, if you are able to identify the nodes from which these communications are emerging, and we neutralize those communication strategies, then you have either bought time or neutralized them to some extent. The ability to do that thing without collateral human life damage would be a big part of my concern, because no matter who wins, ultimately this is a propaganda war as much as it is a real time war that is going on the ground. You saw it in America, how campuses erupted with each one trying to spread their narrative online. So, for some of us, like people from South Asia, who we are following this closely because it reflects our own situations of the past in the Kashmir concerns and the Kashmir crisis that has been contained so far, we can totally relate to this ability. And every time we in India something major was done, the first target was to capture the communication capability and then delay all the impacts that would come,
Sunil,
because
yeah, Sunil,
misinformation
yeah.
spreads faster.
Sunil,
You can spread.
you have a very, very important point, which is quite profound and pragmatic also. And just looking at the paucity of time, I would like to just add that we all, with a little bit of sensible mind, pray for peace all the time. And with people like you who are driven by the power of purpose, they also inspire and act as role model for people to see the better side of life and to build on where they are in a way which serves them as well as to the community around. So, one, I once again want to congratulate you and I want to thank you. And I would like to also see if you can say one line about that moment, which was this.
Pain is temporary, joy is forever.
Beautiful. So, let's be careful and wise in choosing our pain. Thank you very much. Lots of
Thank
good
you.
wishes.
Thank you.